The first day of the Olympic Festival began with a swearing-in ceremony for the participating athletes, trainers, and judges. The ceremony took place in front of the altar of Zeus Horkios, or Zeus of the Oath. Athletes would swear that they would follow the Olympic rules, while judges promised to be fair and unbiased. Then the competitions began, starting with a contest between heralds and trumpeters over who would have the privilege of announcing the games. The first day's athletic competitions consisted of wrestling, running, and boxing events for the youngest athletes, aged 12 to 18. The first day of the Olympic Festival.
Χάριν έχω το κρατήσει στο ΔΕΗΠ σαν την ημερομαλαίων και ικανών.
Ο Έλληνες πολίτης, έτερος μέγας αθλητής εισφορίαν. Ώρα.
The second day began with a grand procession into the Hippodrome to celebrate the start of the popular equestrian events. The most anticipated and spectacular of these was the quadriga, a four-horse chariot race. Horse racing events were unique in that the winner was not the most skilled jockey, but the owner of the fastest horse or chariot. The Spartan princess Kaniska once took advantage of this loophole to skirt the rule that women weren't allowed to compete and earned 2 Olympic victories in the process. The rule also allowed for occasionally strange results, like in 416 BCE, when the statesman Alcibiades entered 7 chariots into a race and won 1st, 2nd, and 4th place. After the equestrian competitions, the 40,000 spectators migrated to the stadium to watch the pentathlon events. When the day's events were over, funeral rites were performed for the hero Pelops, the mythical founder of the Olympic Games. The night ended with a celebratory feast and a great parade in honor of the day's victors.
Ευθέως εκείσε, ου κοιμωγέ, ουδήσιμον το σου λεσμός, ουδίστος σου το δίνος, έγκαστος σου ποετάστε. Τύχη να καθήλακτε.
Εστιμιασμός μηδιόμενος για να κλονίσει την ισορροπία του πνεύματος. Τα γυναίκα διαθέτει στις ώρες ίδιους.
Λέγει ούτως ότι η συμμορία την άκρη
στα τελεμηχανήματα αυτής και να είναι την
βοήθεια και βοφύλακος εξάσχερα.
Victory at the Olympic Games was one of the highest honors a mortal could achieve, and there were several ways to immortalize that honor. Some athletes had statues erected of themselves, while others commissioned poets to write them victory odes. Oral tradition was very important to the Greeks. These odes, called eponychia, were often composed by the finest poets in the land, such as Pindar, Simonides, and Bacchylides. They were usually played at banquets and celebrations attended by the triumphant athlete or upon his departure from Olympia.
Έπαιζε μετενός κοινός, αληθώς και χαριτωμένος.
The pentathlon took place at the stadium on the second day. As its name implies, it was made up of 5 events: discus throwing, javelin throwing, jumping, racing, and wrestling. There are several differences between the ancient version of events and their contemporary counterparts. For example, ancient long jumpers held weights in their hands to give them momentum to launch, since there was no run-up before the jump. Similarly, if an athlete won the first 3 events, they were immediately declared the winner, instead of being judged by their overall performance in all 5 events. Running events work the same as they do today, with the notable exception of all the athletes being nude. As for wrestling, competitors were not divided by weight class as they are today, but instead by age. The winner was the first to throw his opponent to the ground 3 times. Day 3 started with the most important event of the festival. A procession of Hellanodikai, ambassadors, competitors, and animals made their way to the great altar in front of the Temple of Zeus. The animals were then offered as the official sacrifice of the festival. The afternoon of Day 3 was dedicated to foot racing events. Running was the oldest event of the Games, and in fact was the only event at the first Olympics. The main race was called the Stadion, which was a sprint of around 180 meters. The winner was granted the honor of lending his name to the 4-year period between the Games. This period was known as the Olympiad. The 4 years that followed the first Games in 776 BCE were known as the Olympiad of Coroebus of Elis, the first Olympic champion. Once all the competitions were over, a public banquet was held in the Prytaneon to celebrate the day's victors.
Βαβέ, τούτους τους όνους μαστιγού, ακαταπαύστος μαστιγού. Ουε, μη ποιήσεις μια εκτός ομιλήν.
Wrestling matches were held in the morning, followed by boxing and pankration. Pankration was a no-holds-barred mix between wrestling and boxing. Almost all moves were permitted, except for biting, poking the eyes or mouth, and striking the genitals. The event was very popular, and it was seen as the ultimate expression of strength and technique. Later on in the afternoon, there was a unique racing event called the Hoplitodromos, or race in armor. In this event, competitors wore a helmet and held a shield to simulate running in the battlefield.
όποτε ακούεστε την
Βαβέ,
φωνή. Ναι,
τούτους τους
πειράτε
όνους
τούτο
μαστιγού.
καθαρό.
Ακαταπαύστος μαστιγού. Ουε, μην ποιήσεις μη εκτός ομιλήν.
The Hellenodikai, or judges of the Greeks, were both the game's adjudicators and their organizers. They hailed from Elis, the city in charge of the sanctuary of Olympia, and new judges were elected each Olympiad. They had several responsibilities. Before the games started, they decided which athletes would be allowed to compete and supervise their training. They also drew lots to make the competition brackets. During the games themselves, they picked the winners and kept an eye out for foul play. For the latter, they were assisted by stick and whip-wielding umpires who stood near the athletes and punished them if they were caught cheating.
Παπέ, το αιμοχειρίδιο είναι...
Μη ποιήσεις μη εκτός ομιλήν.
Μάλλον το είμαι αυτό, λέγω χθες. Μάλλον αυτό θύσει. Λέγονε με αυτό.
Είτε μουσική, εν ρυθμότιμη, άδετε και εργάζεστε.
Και καλάθιον την ονεόρακα.
Γρηγορείτε, παιδες.
Αναγνώρισε τη φύση. Έλεγε ότι είχε κάποιο. Έστειλε ότι
Victory in Olympia was one of the most prestigious honors in all of Greece. Not only would victors be showered in glory in their home city, but their names would be known across Greece. The temptation to glory led some athletes to break their oath to Zeus and cheat. This could be dangerous, as there were many possible punishments should cheaters be caught. They could be disqualified and fined, or if they were caught cheating during a match, they would be beaten by nearby umpires. The most powerful deterrent of cheating, however, was shame. At the foot of Mount Kronios, and on the way to the stadium, were a group of bronze statues called Zanes, the plural of Zeus. These statues were inscribed with the names of the cheating athletes, how they cheated, and the fine that was imposed. The Zanes, which were funded by cheaters' fines, were strategically placed to be highly visible. Individuals or even entire cities could be found guilty of cheating.
Προείρικα το πατρίσιο ότι έδικα. Αδύνατον εστί.
Στασί όταν η μύτηρη κλινήρης.
Λείψω με δάνειον ή να δίνομαι από πληρού τους τόπους. Η τραγωδία διαφύρει τους
The Prytaneion was the administrative center of the cult of Olympia and the Olympic Games. The building housed the sanctuary's priests as well as the game's officials. It was also used to stage the grand banquet held on the evening of the third day to honor victors. It also had a sacred function. Its central chamber was the location of the Fire of Hestia, a sacred flame that burned day and night. This fire was used to light the other altars around the sanctuary. This practice may have partially inspired the modern tradition of carrying the Olympic torch.
τραγωδοποιός. Κάλλιον έσεστε εκ... Οι χαρακτήρες εν τες τραγωδίες προαιρούνται του ύψους της διανοίας έδικε. Η τραγωδία εκλαμβάνει...
Η τραγωδία διαφθείρει τους νέους και ούτι καταμαλθακίζονται. Εκπλήσει. Αποφέρεται το πυρί του ατόπου υποθάλποντι λέγει. Ιδέ ο άνθρωπος και ιδέ το δέον πράτην. Συνίσχυ τον κικαιώνα του μυαλού, όγε ουκ έστιν υγεία.
Δυσπετώ το βίο.
Καταδικαστέ.
Λέγω εμ' αυτό. Και βρέτη
Hello again! I hope you enjoyed your visit. With their spectacular events and lavish banquets, the Olympic Games were a feast for the senses. I am certain even Zeus himself was entertained by the festivities. Now, is there anything else you'd like to do? Wonderful! Let's start. Which notable woman won an event in the Games? Correct! She won 2 equestrian events thanks to her savvy horse purchases. This next question is slightly more challenging. Which of the following is not a famous Greek poet? You are right! Brasidas was a renowned Spartan general, and he didn't have time for rhymes and pretty words. Time for the final question. How many events were in the pentathlon? No, I won't give away the answer, but I will tell you there was more than one event in the pentathlon. Try again. No, 10 events would be a decathlon, which would be intense even for the Olympic Games. Try another answer. Yes, the Greek word for pende means 5, and the pentathlon had 5 events. Well done, my friend. You truly possess a sharp mind. Thirsty for more, eh? Hello again! I hope you enjoy. With their spectacular events and lavish banquet. Now, is there any... Very well.
Οι χαρακτήρες εν τες τραγωδίες προαιρούνται του ύψους της διανοίας.
Welcome to Gnossos, traveler, where the Minotaur once prowled. My name is Herodotus, and I am a traveler from Hyrcanassus. I retrace the cause of various events, such as wars and great calamities. I describe what I see and record what I'm told, all with the aim of providing a better understanding of why these things occur. Look for me to introduce you to many sights. Some say, if you listen closely, you can still hear echoes of the Minotaur's ferocious bellowing. Of course, it may only be a trick of the wind. Perhaps. Knossos was the seat of the old Minoan civilization, where King Minos once supposedly ruled. These ruins have been the backdrop for many important events in both history and mythology. Look for me when your visit is over, and we'll discuss what you've seen.
The island of Crete was first settled around 8000 BCE. Over time, significant towns and maritime trade began to develop. Palaces were built, destroyed, and then rebuilt, culminating in what archaeologists call the Neopalatial period, which began around 1700 BCE. This period lasted for over 300 years, and is considered the golden age of Minoan civilization. The largest palace of this period was located in Knossos and featured maze-like complexes of workshops, temples, courts, throne rooms, and living areas, as well as paved roads and advanced plumbing and draining. Trade and external relations were important to the Minoans, and their networks extended across the eastern Mediterranean. As a result, the people of Crete and the lands they traded with often influenced each other and exchanged ideas, usually through peaceful interactions instead of military conflict. The settlement of Knossos was established as early as the 7th millennium BCE. Today, one of the site's most notable landmarks is the palace ruins, located on the Kafala Hill. The ruins are split into two phases: the old palace, which has been poorly preserved, and the new palace. The new palace of Knossos had a surface area of approximately 13,000 square meters, making it the largest Minoan palace. Its focal point was a central court, which was probably used for ceremonial activities. The Minoan palace centers collapsed when Crete was overrun and conquered by a Mycenaean invasion from mainland Greece. However, the date of the final destruction of Knossos' palace is still unknown. During the new palace phase, the ground floor was dedicated to economic activities and contained large storage rooms. The residential quarters, which notably had toilets, were located southeast of the central court, at the foot of the grand staircase. The palace was lavishly decorated with wall paintings depicting things like bull-related sports and richly dressed women. Large stone horns of consecration, which were important Minoan religious symbols, hung prominently in the west court. Other notable parts of the palace include the theatrical area, which is believed to have served as a viewing space, the tripartite shrine, which was dedicated to the worship of an important Minoan deity historians refer to as the Mother Goddess, and the Piano Nobile, a grand space located on the palace's second floor. During his trips to Crete, archaeologist Arthur John Evans discovered several ancient tablets. They eventually led him to define the forms of Minoan writing known as Linear A and Linear B. The Minoans used these forms of writing for recording many things, including business transactions. For example, one clay tablet discovered at the Palace of Knossos was inscribed in Linear B script. The tablet detailed the transfer of coriander, often used in the perfume industry, between a man named Kyprios and another person named Twinon. The deciphering of tablets such as these has given historians great insight into many aspects of Minoan culture and society. According to myth, the half-man, half-bull Minotaur was born after Queen Pasiphae slept with a bull sent by the gods as punishment upon her. This embarrassed King Minos, but he could not bring himself to kill the Minotaur. Instead, he hid the monster in a labyrinth constructed by Daedalus. Daedalus was an important figure in Greek mythology, an ingenious inventor. He once became so jealous of his similarly clever nephew that he threw him from the top of the Athenian Acropolis. As a consequence, Daedalus was banished from Athens, though this did not prevent him from being able to get work. In Crete, he was hired by Queen Pasiphae to construct an artificial cowsuit that would allow her to seduce a bull she was particularly taken with due to a curse from the gods. Daedalus complied, and his invention helped facilitate the birth of the Minotaur. Afterwards, Minos conscripted Daedalus to build the labyrinth, presumably as penance for his role in creating the Minotaur. But perhaps the most well-known story about Daedalus involves his son, Icaros, who used wings built by his father and flew too close to the sun, thus plummeting into the sea. Sometime after the birth of the Minotaur, King Minos' son Androgeos was killed in Athens by the same bull that impregnated his mother. An infuriated Minos demanded that Athens send 7 of their noblest men and 7 of their most virtuous women to Knossos every year. After being carried to Crete, One of the Athenian youths chosen to be imprisoned in the labyrinth, Theseus, had enough of the morbid ritual. Before leaving Athens, he proclaimed he would kill the Minotaur, then return to his city on a ship flying white sails. Before entering the labyrinth, Theseus met King Minos' daughter, Ariadne, who fell madly in love with him. Ariadne provided Theseus with a thread he could unravel to help him find his way back out of the maze. Armed with this thread, Theseus entered the labyrinth, killed the Minotaur, escaped the maze, and set sail for Athens with Ariadne by his side.
I see you found your way through the Maze of Ruins. The Minoans played a large part in shaping Greek myths, but also in introducing influences from other places and cultures. Now, what else would you like to do? You want to test yourself? Very well. Let's begin with a simple question. On which island was Knossos located? Thasos was famous for wine, not man-eating bullmen. Try again. Yes, Knossos was located on the island of Crete. Time for another question. Which hero killed the Minotaur? Correct. Theseus slew the Minotaur, then escaped the labyrinth thanks to some thread from Ariadne. Now for the last question. What did Daedalus build for Queen Pasiphae? Yes, Daedalus made Pasiphae a cowsuit, so she could seduce the bull she was cursed to love. Congratulations, traveler. You are a true student of history. Farewell, traveler. I hope you enjoyed exploring the ruins.
αναγκαίων τάραχος και...
Τι συγγνώμη, εγώ, έστε τούτο το δώρο να πτήσα κοιτάπου.
Άφη προσεδέχθη ταύτα προς χάριν σου και νύο την ιδέαση.
Και ο ήχος πρέπει να
Όπισθεν του πολιτηρίου ευρύσεις τη μάνδραν μετά της ύλης. Ενταυτή ευρύσεις ρητίνην και ύλην έκθες Αλίας και Μακεδονίας.
Here, visitor, and welcome to this sacred site.
Τέλειων τόπων. Ναι, η ύλη ελάτης ηχρήνται προς κόπας αξιολόγων νέων. Έντα επικλίματος εξαιρέτου. Σκοπής οικοδομηνικιάν μία φύης καιρών.
Delphi is an amazing place to visit if you're looking for information. I've come here on several occasions in search of answers to some particularly puzzling questions. And sometimes I even found them. This is Delphi, home of the renowned oracle. Greeks considered it the navel of the world. Pilgrims and kings journeyed here from all over Greece and beyond, seeking advice from Apollo through the voice of his interpreter, Pythia. During your visit, you will experience the sanctuary through a pilgrim's eye and discover how important oracles and prophecies were to the people of Greece. Now, go off and begin your pilgrimage. I will be waiting for you at the end of your visit.
Χαίρετε και καλώς ήλθετε στο μείζον πολιτήριον ενταυτή. Βεβόδια αρώματα εκφορήν που και... Έχομεν πόδας βαμβακεράς εξ Αιγύπτου και οθόνας Αρίστας. Έχομεν ράπτας Αριστοτεχνίτας. Το εκτιοπολίον εστί ημέτερον. Αντακαίων τάραχος και λευκόχρουν φάλιν, ακυπησίους τίνους, σκόμβρους και τρίγλας εξευξίνου πόντου. Έχομεν ταριχίους ηχθείς εκ πόντου και προποντίδος. Έχομεν αλιφάστους ηχθείς και άλλας εκ Διοσκουρίας, τραπεζούντος, Συνόπης και Ηρακλείας. Μάλιστα, έχομεν ηχθείς απανταχώθεν του κόσμου. Όπισθεν του πολιτηρίου ευρύσεις την μάνδραν μετά της ύλης. Ενταυστή ευρύσεις Ρητίνην και Ήλιν εκ Θεσσαλίας και Μακεδονίας. Εις περολίγοι την εσκάπηλη έχουν συνάντιαν. Αλλά όμως ήλθες εις των τέλειων τόπων. Ναι, η ύλη Ελλάτης τίχρηται προσκόπας αξιολόγων νέων έμφα επί τιμήματος εξαιρέτου. Σκοπής οικοδομηνικίαν, την αφήης καιρών. Χαίρετε και καλώς ήλθετε εις το μείζον πολιτήριον ενταυτή. Ευωδή αρώματα εκ Κορίνθου και Κρήτης. Δωρέ βοήε εκ Κυρίνης και εξ Αθηνών. Και ίνος εκ Θάσου και Ρόδου. Για να ζητήσετε μάλλον τι, δυνατόν εστι ευρίσκειν έτη δεΐνων παρίαν. Έχομεν αγία κεραμία εκ Κορίνθου και άλλα στινάς σπουδαίας απομιμήσεις εκ Μιλήτου. Στον Αρκαθεύδο. Και δηλαδή
Leggo
είτε και καλώς ήλθετε στο μείζον πολιτήριον ενταφή. Ευωδή αρώματα εκ Κορίνθου και Κρήτης, δωρέ βοήε εκ Κυρίνης και εξ Αθηνών, και ίνος εκ Τάσου. Ουγάρ πρωτότυπον έστησε έχει νικώσει τον τι, και θέτω μεν ποζοϊκτίδια και ορνήθια, είτε πόλητα τέκνα σου και λαμπεπιθήκιον. Και δηλαδή εξεβολόμεν έτη δύση τυρά, αναζητήσατε σύ τον Νιλαίο. Έχουμε... δηλαδή εξεμπολόμενε τη δύση τυρά. Αναζητήσατε σύντων νηλαίων. Πως γαρεξήκε το και περισύ ναυτικοί αποκλεισμοί, επήλθε αμέσως διακυρήνης. Έχουμε ναυτοποιούς και καμίνους. Φρία στα σπογγίτας άρτους, ήτινες εσύ ανεπίκλητη τη Διονύσο τραπέζι. Και πλακούντας όντινον ουδέ. Όπλιστον του πολιτηρίου ευρύσεις την μάνδραν μετά της ύλης. Ενταυτή ευρύσεις τριτίνη. Χαίρετε και καλώς ήλθετε εις το μείζον πολιτήριον ενταυτή. Ευωδή αρώματα εκ Κορίνθου και Κρήτης. Δωρεύω Ιε εκ Κυρίνης και εξ Αθηνός και Ίνος εκ Θάσου και Κερόδους. Για να ζητήσετε μάλλον τι δυνατόν εστι ευρύς κινέτη δε Ίνων παρίαν. Έχουμε αγία κεραμία εκ Κορίνθου και άλλα σκηνά σπουδαίας απομιλήσεις εκ Μιλήτου. Πουγάρ πρωτότυπον έστησε έχει νικώσει τον τι, και θέτομεν ποζοϊκτίδια και ορνήθια, είτε πόλητα τέκνα σου και λαβεπιθήκιον. Και δηλαδή εξεμπολόμενε τη δύση τυρά. Αναζητήσατε σύντων νηλαίων. Πως γαρεξήκε το και περισύ ναυτικοί αποκλεισμοί, επήλθε αμέσως διακυρήνης. Έχουμε ναυτοποιούς και καμίνους. Φρία στα σπογγίτας άρτους, ήτιμες εσύ ανεπίκλητη τη Διονύσο τραπέζι. Και φλακούντας όντινον ουδέποτε γεύσαστε. Ονίσαστε άρτους είχατε, προς χάριν των προσφυλών ή προς χάριν της εισηκτίδος η ζήτω μου. Χαίρετε και καλώς ήλθετε στο μείζον πολιτήριον ενταχθεί. Με βοδή αρώματα εκ Κορίνθου.
On their journey to the Temple of Apollo, pilgrims walked this sacred path up Mount Parnassus. The summer sun beat down hot on their backs. Along the way, they took in the magnificent monuments, treasuries, and statues that adorned the road. These landmarks were tokens of people's reverence for the oracle's benevolence. All were dedicated to Apollo, and most were offered by cities to commemorate military victories. The monuments represented not only their donors' piety, but also their power and wealth. The sanctity of Delphi has endured to the present day, and visitors still take this very same route.
Η ακριβής τελείως, ούκ έστιμης πρέτεινας, σως πατήρης τα ανέσχει, ο εμός αδελφός κολλήματα δυνάμουν τους φέρει στο άσπαση τα έφορε, αλλά μόνο δείτε με τα πράγματα περί τίνων προβλημάτων σήμερα, ηθικών φοβών, μυθώδες, της εκτοστές, η φαρπαγένεια άπαντα, πλανώντες σε κατέχοντες και διαπαιτές. Ο νέα σχολεία την αβεβαίωση. Μην μιμήτης τα γέννητε σκηνικών επόμενων. Ισουδαίος ο διδάσκαλος, ως της ποιον πρέπει να ξυνάπα.
Δυσπετώ το βίο, λέγω εμ' αυτό, ευρέ την ασχολίαν. Ω ναι, ασχολίαν την αβεβαίω.
So proud of the born to be Spartan.
One of the most impressive dedications to Apollo came from the Cnidians, a Greek population that colonized the island of Lipari, north of Sicily. The story behind this dedication is notable. The Cnidians were at war with the Etruscans in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Seeking a good omen, the Cnidians consulted the oracle, and following her advice, they successfully captured 20 enemy ships. To thank Apollo, they offered the god the same number of statues as ships seized.
Άπασες λήξεις πάβονται πως προσέχει και εντός του οίκου.
Next to the Naxian Sphinx stood a simple structure to display offerings from the Athenians, most of which were spoils of war. In particular, these offerings, called ex-votos, were prows of sunken Persian ships. The Athenians built the portico after their naval victory over the Persians in 478 BCE. Once arriving before the temple, pilgrims wishing to consult the oracle had to first pay a tax. This tax gave them the initial right to approach the altar of Apollo and make an animal sacrifice to the god. But before proceeding to the Pythia, the preliminary ritual had to succeed. If the animal reacted favorably and showed signs of acceptance to the god, it was sacrificed, and the pilgrim would be allowed to enter the temple to question the Pythia.
Καταδικαστέα είναι τραγωδία διευθύνει τους νέους και ούτε...
At last we arrive at the Temple of Apollo, where the oracle relayed her prophecies. The temple was the final destination of those seeking an audience with the Pythia, and its appearance matched the majesty of its purpose. Atop its imposing columns, the structure's pediments displayed famous mythological scenes, sculpted by the renowned Greek artist Antenor. But as grand as the temple looked from the outside, it paled in comparison with what happened within.
Τραγωδία ανέρεσης εστί. Εστί αλλού ευρίσκεται η γνώσης ή μη πάρεξ.
Prophecies were given in the most restricted part of the temple, the Aditon, by a chaste woman known as the Pythia. Before delivering prophecies, she first purified herself with water, then burned laurel leaves and barley flour to begin the ritual. Finally, while seated on a tripod surrounded by offerings, the Pythia delivered Apollo's messages. Her words were often strange and indecipherable, and required further interpretation by the temple's priests. Despite much research, the exact causes of the oracle's behavior while prophesying are debated to this day.
Δι να σε πάβει τούτο.
Myths say that while searching for an oracle who could impart their words to mortals, Apollo established a sanctuary on Mount Parnassos. Apollo took over this site by slaying its sinister guardian, the snake-like Pytho.
ληστρούσα βρωτών ψυχάς, σι Θεά, πως η ειρήνη πολύ όλγων και κόρων.
Πολύ στη βασίλεια.
Your visit is complete. I hope you now understand how important this sanctuary was, and how it affected the lives of people both in the Greek world and beyond its borders. To be honest, I could speak about Delphi all day. But what would you like to do now? Ah, you wish to test your knowledge. Let's begin with a simple question. What did the oracle use to purify herself before her predictions? The Greeks used olive oil for things like meals and medicine, but it was not required to purify the oracle. Try again. Correct. The oracle used water for purification. Time for another question. Which god was believed to speak through the oracle at Delphi? Yes, the oracle allegedly spoke the words of Apollo, which were then interpreted by priests. One final question for you. Delphi is situated on which mountain? Correct. Delphi stood on the slope of Mount Parnassus. Well done, traveler. Your knowledge rivals that of the wisest philosophers. As you wish. It has been a pleasure sharing Delphi with you.
Welcome, wanderer, to the democratic center of Athens, otherwise known as the Pnyx. My name is Aspasia. Though I am not originally from Athens, I have climbed to the top of its social ladder using my wit and intellect. I've even earned the love of Pericles, one of the most powerful men in the city. The mind truly is a beautiful thing. The battles fought here may be more intellectual than bloody, but they are no less spectacular. These outcomes will affect an entire city in a different way. The Pnyx was the meeting place of the Athenian Assembly and the physical embodiment of democracy at work. This tour will give you insight into how citizens made decisions and kept the city running. We can talk more when you have finished the tour. See you soon, Wanderer.
The Athenian Assembly was known as the Ecclesia. It met at the Pnyx 40 times a year to discuss various civic matters, and each session usually lasted a few hours. The word Pnyx is believed to mean something close to packed together. This was probably a reference to the fact that during meetings of the Ecclesia, the location would be filled to its capacity, with citizens packed in practically shoulder to shoulder. All male citizens were allowed to directly participate in the democratic process. Those over 20 years old had the right to speak and vote, while those over 30 could be elected to the higher position of magistrate. In total, there were approximately 30,000 citizens in Athens in the classical period. To draft and adopt decrees, 6,000 of them had to attend the meeting. Citizens came from all over Attica's 10 districts to attend the meetings of the Ecclesia. The meeting was presided over by an executive council called the Prytanes. Every session began with a sacrifice to Zeus Agoreos, the patron of the assembly. During the meeting, citizens delivered speeches from the Pnyx's platform on whatever issues the city faced. Afterwards, the issue was voted on with a show of hands from the gathered assembly. The Ecclesia made important decisions about subjects like grain importation, expenses, and declarations of war. While they could not directly enact laws, they had a say in appointing Athens' legislators, which gave them a large role in shaping the city's daily operations. While some citizens only participated in the sessions of the Ecclesia, others could become more involved in democracy as magistrates. Magistrates were elected from among Athenian citizens over 30. They were often successful orators and charismatic politicians, and they held much more sway over important decisions than the average citizen. One of the most famous magistrates was Pericles, who was so popular, he held his position for 15 years. In theory, every Athenian citizen over the age of 20 had the right to participate in the assembly. However, some of them lived far from the city, and others could not financially afford to miss a day of work to attend meetings. For these reasons, the city introduced a special allowance called a misthos ecclesiastikos in the 4th century BCE, meant to encourage participation. Originally, it was 2 obols, but the politician Cleon raised it to 3. Athens introduced several innovations that heavily influenced modern society, including theater, architecture, and philosophy. However, their greatest contribution was their democratic government, which introduced the concept of a city ruled by its citizens. The decision to adopt democracy as a government, a choice made in 508 BCE, shaped civilization as we know it, and continues to affect us today.
Λέγωση, οι εμείς εξαδέλφοι αποκτήσατε πολλά τη χρήματα των πρώτερων μήνων.
Hello again, Wanderer. I trust you appreciated learning about the inner workings of the city. Is there anything else you'd like to do? Then let's start with a simple question. Approximately how many citizens were in Athens in my time? Athens' general population was believed to be around 300,000, but only a select few of this number were citizens. Keep trying. Yes, there were approximately 30,000 citizens in Athens, although the population as a whole was much larger. On to the second question. Who of the following was a famous Athenian magistrate? Yes, Pericles was an extremely popular magistrate who managed to keep his position for 15 years. Only one question left. What does the word penix mean? Correct. The penix was usually crowded with citizens attending meetings of the ecclesia. You know enough about democracy to be a politician yourself. Well done, Wanderer. Very well. Farewell, Wanderer.
Και η ανιχνευταία αμοιβή μικράν επίσης.
Η ερωτώ μισθολογήσης γέννητο, μάταιωνε στην περιφέρεστα των καιρών τούτων. Το εξαδέλφος ο Ίσινη χαιρετίζει μάλλον.
Όχι.
Ούτε έχω τόσα αυτά χρήματα. Λείψω με δάνειον ή να δίνω με αποπληρούν τους πόρους.
Καλούμε σε Μάκαν, πολιώνυμε, περίπολε.
Μεγαλώνει με θεά.
Επικαλούμε σε μακαρόν πολιώνυμε.
Οπότε είσαι αυτός ο Θεός.
Της τραγωδίας, Σοφοκλής δείκνηση μην κοινή τρόπο για την χάρη.
Η μεταλόγου εξήγηση του πολυσίου ζητήματος των κόσμων και αναπόταση της βάσης.
Η τραγωδία κινείται μεταξύ τριών βαθμίδων. Δι συνεκτιμής εδεόντος του απροσδόκητου.
Απλώς προσαπόμενε, και νυν το ζεύγος των εραστών υφύπτω της θεής, επαναπηρώνται έκαστον άγιες ελκυδών εν διοδού αυτού, ο ίσες μανίαν, ο έτερος εις λογική. Η αιτία όμως τεχνή και ανεβουκάλες, ή το ελάχιστο